Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Story 2 Crazy Stories with Uncle Swamp Ass. I'm your Uncle Swamp Ass. So I'm going to stick to these are all Vancouver stories. So, although I'm throwing in some other crazy stories that have happened along the way, some from here in Fredericton, but the real crazy shit happened when we were in West. So last night I was talking about the shop that we worked at in Vancouver for Toby Lindelow was our boss, the makeup effects crew from the X Files. And his shop, well, his very first shop was at his home in East Vancouver. And then season three, the budget really kicked up, so he needed a bigger space, so he got the spot in the downtown east side of Vancouver. Pender and Clark, I think it was, and Pender, Clark, and Hastings. That is an open sore. During the 1990s and early 2000s, sometimes they'll still talk about it now, that there was an epidemic in Vancouver. Heroin and meth, fentanyl, all that stuff. I mean, back in the 90s, I don't think fentanyl was even really probably a thing, but it was a bad. I mean, it was one of the worst places in North America. It had like an absolute worst, like horrible drug epidemic that was going on there, and where we were, our shop. So our shop, little drawing here. Use your minds, imaginations. So our shop was, connected to kind of a strip of some other stores, and then across the street from our shop was a laundry facility, and they did laundry for like restaurants and hotels and kind of major like big places, not like a regular laundromat. And then kitty corner to that was an apartment building that housed a lot of the prostitutes and pimps and drug addicts that were in the area where our shop was. So, like I was saying last night, the shop had two-way glass or one-way glass or whatever it is, where we can see out but they can't see in. The shop didn't have anything on it. I mean, whatever state of mind that they were in. Like, we walked by a lot of the girls every day, going to the store, going to get lunch, coming back from lunch. They're always out there, sometimes more with it than other times, like watching them, pick stuff off the ground, probably thinking it was crack or meth or whatever. What always amazed me about the prostitution thing, and particularly where we were, because we were a business. I mean, not that the guy could tell what kind of business we were, but we'd be working in, like, Jim's Plumbing, or Rogers Cable, major companies to small companies, with the phone number on the side of their work vehicle, and they're stopping and getting like these, like, I know it's a bad thing, but the dregs of society, like, in the world of escorts and prostitution, there's your street hookers, and then, up to call girls or whatever that are, look like anybody else on, that's walking around, kind of thing. And these are like the worst of the worst. Like, you're gonna, it just boggled my mind that somebody in a work truck would be in this area and be seen. It's got to be some kind of addiction for those people too. I don't know. But this area that we were in was Willie Picton, the pig farmer serial killer. This was his hunting ground. These were the women that he was picking up. The meat rendering plant where he took his pigs after he'd fed the prostitutes to them that were all cut up. That meat rendering plant was just a couple of blocks away. So it was a wild area. One day when we were coming back to the shop, we came around the corner and there was like a SWAT team there and stuff like that. There was another day we were working, we heard like bang, 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 and they were flashbangs, and we got to the front of the shop and saw, like, the SWAT guys going in through the windows, the doors, and they completely cleared out all the prostitutes and drug addicts, and they were all back the next day. What the story I'm going to talk to you today about is a theft that happened at the shop. one afternoon. Myself, Ian Biggs, and Toby's brother Rob, we were in the shop talking. So the shop had a big bay door, and our makeup effects truck, we used to be able to pull it right inside the shop. And that day, the bay door was open and the truck was in the shop, but its ass end was just kind of sitting out of the door. And Rob or Ian had been working on something on the truck. But I'm standing there talking to them, and I'm facing the bay door, and they're facing me. And as I'm talking to them, I can see the bumper of like from the other side. The truck's facing me, but I can see the back end, and the bumper part where you'd step up into the trunk, and I see his hand come out of nowhere and grab something, which was a grinder, a metal grinder. And as Rob and Ian are talking to me, I'm like looking, and then I'm like and they turn around, and I'm like, someone just stole the grinder or stole something out of the back of the truck. So I took off running towards the truck. Ian took off running towards the truck, and Rob actually went through the front of the shop and out the front door. By the time I got to the back of the shop, the guy was, excuse me, already around the corner. He managed to somehow get by Rob, and so he had three people chasing him. There was Rob, Ian, and myself. And the guy with the grinder ran across the street and ran through this apartment building, the one that I said that the cops had swatted. Everybody was still living there at the time when this happened. So he went through the building first, then Rob went through the building, and then Ian went through the building, and then shortly after Ian, I went through the building. And I was thinking about this the other day, like, anything could have happened once the perpetrator and Rob went through. Like, people would have started to notice that, hey, shit, something's going on. And when I ran through, fuck, I could have been shot, or who knows what happened. Nothing did happen, but anyways, it was kind of a risky thing to do. All of this was very risky, actually. So I emerged out of the front of the apartment building, and Hastings, which is pretty much like a fucking 4-lane highway, cars whizzing by in both directions. And as I got out onto Hastings, I looked and I saw Ian just running across the street. Rob had already crossed, and the perpetrator was already on the other side of Hastings. So I ran through traffic and across the street. Now, while this was going on, just next, so on the same street that we're on, the shop, and on the corner there's the crack prostitution house, and then over on Hastings and just around the corner from us is I think it was a Petrocan that was there, and the guy who owned the Petrocan just happened to see someone run across, and then saw Rob go across, and then saw Ian go across, and then he said he saw me go across. So he was like, Jesus, what's going on? So he jumped into his truck, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was actually an ex Vancouver police officer, and he recognized Rob, Ian, and myself running across the street after. So he thought something must be up. So he got into his truck, and he set out. I got across Hastings, and I walked down. I can't tell you the streets that are around it. I don't know. I walked down the street, and I kind of started to realize that I was alone in a very seedy area of Vancouver, chasing someone who had stolen something from us, and I don't know if the guy had a knife, a gun, or anything. So I started looking for something to defend myself with if I ran into the guy. And while I was doing that, this SUV pulls up, and it was the owner of the gas station, this former Vancouver police officer, and he's like, what is going on? So I told him what was happening, and he told me to get in the truck, and we drive around and see if we could find Rob and Ian, which we didn't. We drove around and didn't see them anywhere. And I think when I got back to the shop, I think Rob was already back. And then about maybe 15-20 minutes later, Ian shows up with the grinder. And Ian had ran after this guy. I don't know where Rob lost him, but Ian had managed to pick up his trail and saw this guy duck in to like a business, like a door. And so when Ian got to that business, he opened up the door, and the guy was sitting on the stairs in the front of the business with the grinder, and like was like huffing and puffing out of breath. And Ian said that he didn't even say anything to the guy. He opened up the door, saw the guy with the grinder, punched him right in the face, took the grinder, and left. And so that was one of those crazy stories from Vancouver. Hope you enjoyed it.